Coco Gauff just apologized to her own team after losing the Italian Open final. And honestly, that single moment may have revealed how deeply this rivalry with Elina Svitolina is starting to affect her emotionally, because this wasn't just another tough loss. This was the third time in 2026 that Svitolina defeated Gauff. Australian Open, Dubai, now Rome. And after nearly 3 exhausting hours on clay, standing under the lights during the trophy ceremony, Gauff looked emotionally drained. Not angry, not defeated completely. Just frustrated that once again she couldn't solve the same problem. That's what made her speech feel so real, especially when she turned toward her team and quietly apologized. "I'm sorry I couldn't play a little bit better in some moments today." That line hit differently, because great athletes rarely apologize publicly after reaching major finals. Usually they focus on positives, thank their teams, and move forward quickly. But Gauff's reaction revealed something deeper. She genuinely believed this was a match she could have won. And honestly, she probably isn't wrong. That's what makes this rivalry so fascinating and painful at the same time. Every match between these two feels close enough to give Gauff hope, but stable enough for Svitolina to eventually regain control. That pattern repeated again in Rome. At first, the final looked like another tactical masterclass from Svitolina. She captured the opening set 6-4 by exposing the same issue that has haunted Gauff throughout this rivalry: the forehand. Whenever pressure rises against Svitolina, Gauff's forehand side becomes shaky. The shot selection changes. The confidence disappears. And suddenly rallies that should stay neutral become defensive instantly. Svitolina knows exactly how to attack that weakness now. That's dangerous, because once one elite player repeatedly discovers the same emotional and tactical trigger point, matches start becoming psychological before they even begin. And honestly, that's where this rivalry sits now: psychological territory. Still, this Rome final also showed why Gauff remains one of the most dangerous young players in the world. She refused to mentally collapse. That mattered. Earlier this year at the Australian Open, the loss felt emotionally overwhelming almost immediately. Svitolina crushed her 6-1, 6-2, and Gauff later smashed her racket in frustration walking off court. Rome felt different. Even after losing the first set, even after Svitolina controlled large parts of the match tactically, Gauff kept fighting. She adjusted. She started using more variety. The drop shots improved. The movement became sharper. And eventually she forced a second set tiebreak. That moment felt massive emotionally, because for the first time all season against Svitolina, it looked like Gauff might finally shift the momentum of the rivalry. The crowd could feel it too. Every big point became louder. Every long rally carried more tension. And when Gauff won the tiebreak 7-3, it honestly felt like the match had completely changed. Then Svitolina reminded everyone why she's suddenly becoming one of the scariest players in women's tennis. She stayed calm. No panic, no emotional drop, no frustration. She walked into the third set looking completely composed, while Gauff still looked emotionally exhausted from the energy required just to force the decider. That contrast changed everything. Immediately, Svitolina attacked again. She pressured the forehand side. She extended rallies. She forced extra movement. And suddenly Gauff started missing key returns early in the third set. Before anyone fully realized what happened, Svitolina had complete control. Again, that's the terrifying thing about this matchup right now for Gauff fans. Even when Coco builds momentum, even when she starts solving parts of the puzzle, Svitolina somehow finds a way to emotionally reset faster. That's veteran experience. And honestly, this Rome run may be one of the greatest stretches of Svitolina's career. Think about the players she defeated: Elena Rybakina, Iga Swiatek, then Coco Gauff. That's the number 2, 3, and 4 players in the world. On clay, in one tournament. That's absurd. And suddenly, at 31 years old, Svitolina looks younger emotionally than many players 10 years below her in the rankings. That's what experience can do in tennis sometimes. Players stop wasting emotional energy. They stop panicking during momentum swings. They trust patterns that already worked before. Against Gauff, Svitolina clearly trusts her patterns completely now. And honestly, why wouldn't she? She's beaten Coco 3 straight times this season. Now let's talk about the speeches, because both players revealed a lot emotionally afterward. Gauff's speech felt incredibly honest. There was disappointment, but also maturity. She congratulated Svitolina warmly. She thanked her team. She admitted lessons were learned. Most importantly, she still sounded hopeful about Roland Garros despite another painful loss. That matters. because mentally weaker players sometimes allow one difficult matchup to completely damage their confidence overall. Gauff doesn't sound broken emotionally. Frustrated? Absolutely. But still ambitious. You could hear it when she mentioned hopefully meeting Svitolina again in the French Open final. That wasn't accidental. Deep down, Gauff still believes she can solve this rivalry eventually. And honestly, she probably can someday. But right now, this belongs entirely to Svitolina. Now, Svitolina's speech may have been even more emotional, especially near the end. After thanking her team and joking about her husband Gael Monfils criticizing her speeches, the tone suddenly shifted completely when she spoke about Ukraine. That moment hit hard, because while fans focus on trophies, rankings, and rivalries, Svitolina continues carrying emotional weight far beyond tennis. Hearing her thank people watching from bomb shelters back home reminded everyone that this tournament meant something much bigger emotionally for her. That's perspective. And honestly, it may partially explain why she plays with such calmness under pressure now. When athletes carry larger emotional purpose into competition, stressful tennis moments can suddenly feel smaller mentally. Svitolina's composure throughout Rome reflected that, even after nearly 3-hour battles, even against elite opponents. She never looked emotionally overwhelmed. That's championship mentality. And now she owns 3 Rome titles. 3. Alongside all of this, another statistic quietly became terrifying for the rest of the WTA Tour. Svitolina is now 8-0 in clay court finals during her career. 8 finals, 8 victories. That's legendary consistency, especially considering the modern depth in women's tennis. Meanwhile, Gauff faces a very different emotional challenge now heading into Roland Garros. Last year, she entered Paris full of confidence and eventually captured the title. This season feels different emotionally because one player keeps interrupting her momentum repeatedly. And unfortunately for Gauff, that player suddenly looks stronger than ever. That's why this rivalry has become so fascinating psychologically. Svitolina plays freely because she keeps winning. Gauff plays under pressure because she desperately wants to stop the losing streak. That imbalance matters enormously at the highest level, especially in Grand Slams. Now imagine if they meet again in Paris. The tension would be unbelievable, because suddenly it's no longer just about tactics. It's about whether Gauff can emotionally survive another battle against the one player who keeps exposing her weaknesses most consistently in 2026. And honestly, Roland Garros suddenly feels wide open because of it. At the beginning of clay season, many fans expected Swiatek or Gauff to dominate the conversation. Instead, Svitolina stormed through Rome, destroying nearly every major contender standing in front of her. That changes everything. And perhaps the most dangerous part for the rest of the tour is this. Svitolina genuinely looks like she's enjoying herself. The movement looks natural. The confidence looks effortless. The emotional control looks complete. That combination becomes terrifying during Grand Slam season. Still, this loss could eventually help Gauff long-term too. Painful rivalries often force elite athletes to evolve faster. Maybe this matchup becomes the thing that sharpens Gauff mentally before the biggest tournaments. Maybe these losses force tactical adjustments she otherwise never develops. That's possible. Because one thing we know about Coco Gauff is she rarely stays down forever. But for now, Rome belongs to Elina Svitolina completely. And after hearing Coco apologize publicly to her team, one thing became crystal clear. This loss hurt deeply, not because Gauff played badly, because she's starting to realize how difficult this puzzle truly is. So now the question shifts to all of you. After beating Coco Gauff for the 3rd time this season, has Elina Svitolina officially become the biggest mental obstacle in Gauff's career right now? Or will these painful losses eventually create the version of Coco Gauff that dominates women's tennis for years? Because after Rome, this rivalry suddenly feels bigger than just wins and losses. It feels personal. TennisIQ is where we break down the rivalries, pressure, and emotional moments shaping modern tennis, and trust me, the Gauff Svitolina story feels far from finished.